From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 3 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
Welcome. Our guest today is legal and political analyst Seth Berensweig. And on that note, we shall go to our first issue, which is issue 1, Cohen Smith.
President Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen, this week exercised his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent in civil proceedings related to the Stormy Daniels case. Miss Daniels alleges that she was paid by Cohen to conceal details of an extramarital affair that she says she had with Trump in 2006. But from Cohen, who is under federal investigation, the silence seems deafening. And note these 2 addendums. In comments this week, President Trump distanced himself from Cohen. And on Tuesday, Trump's newly appointed attorney, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, met with special counsel Robert Mueller towards arranging an interview with the president.
Pat, does the Cohen situation as it stands at the moment put Trump in more immediate legal jeopardy?
I think the Fox and Friends interview that the president did, whereby he indicated that Cohen only did a little bit of his work, but he did handle this Stormy Daniels thing for me. And by the way, I did spend one night in Moscow.
Right. We're on to that later, so save that for
another. Let me tell you what that tells you. Rudy Giuliani ought not to take the president before any deposition before the Mueller investigation. He ought not to do any interviews. The best thing for him, when you see how he contradicted himself, best thing for Trump is to tell Mueller, get it over, make your report, get this out of the legal arena, and get it into the political arena where we can win it. It would be the worst mistake Trump ever made if he lets himself sit down with those interviewers.
Eleanor.
Oh, I agree. It would be unthinkable for Trump to sit down because he doesn't know when he's telling a lie or a truth, and he's bound to get himself into deeper trouble. But I don't know that you can just decide you're not going to cooperate with the special counsel. I mean, Mueller could subpoena him. The Supreme Court could get involved. I know then we're back in the Watergate days. And so bottom line is the president is in more legal trouble now that Michael Cohen is involved in this. And 16 devices that were seized from Cohen's office and his home, going back to 2 BlackBerries, 20 years worth of information. And basically by taking the 5th, Cohen has ceded the ground to Stormy Daniels, and where Michael Agnati, very savvy lawyer, takes that next, embroils the president in deeper legal trouble.
Mr. J.D., what do you think, sir?
Well, we're in a unique moment of legal history here. You have 3 cases that are pending on different coasts that at top level should have really nothing to do with themselves. There's no top-level commonality there. You have a case in Los Angeles regarding a payoff to a porn star. You have a file review for attorney-client privilege with a special master in New York. And then you have a grand jury in a federal court in Washington looking at a bunch of Russians. The common denominator that really draws all of these together, as you're noting earlier in the program, is Michael Cohen. And all of a sudden, because he asserts this Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, he's gravitating the president deeper into this crisis. And this is really the mystery of the unknown. These are blocks that could fall down on the White House.
If you were President Trump's personal attorney, what would you say to him?
I would tell him to put down the phone and just take a deep breath. I agree with Pat. I think that call-in
Good luck with that.
After he takes the deep breath, what does he do?
All right, Clarence, let's bring in Clarence.
It's not fair. I'm just me following an actual lawyer. But in this case, there is precedent for this. It was a scandal called Whitewater, you may have heard of, which began as an investigation of the Clintons and their connections in Arkansas, ends up with the Monica Lewinsky scandal and Clinton's impeachment. This wide-ranging discussion or investigation that we have now with Michael Cohen right in the middle is somewhat similar in the fact that the tentacles go in so many different directions. But one thing you're not going to get from Donald Trump is silence.
Even when
it's for its own good.
Right. Remember, Bill Clinton got into a perjury trap about sex.
That's right.
And if he hadn't gone under oath and been interrogated under oath, he might not have had that problem. That's why do not go in and talk to Mueller. Do not talk to anybody, especially an FBI agent.
But politically, to have refused to cooperate, that would have been disaster. And I don't think legally Bill Clinton could have gotten away with it. And that was the Paula Jones. That was a separate case having to do with a relationship you know, she claimed forced, he claimed consensual, whatever. That's what opened the door
But you
to
got
his
this civil
fatalism.
deposition
It wasn't
now
the special counsel.
in the case you mentioned out there with the Stormy Daniels thing,
right.
and that
right.
her attorney is going to try to bring him in for a
We'll bring this up
deposition.
again on issue 3 when we get to that. Anyway, issue 2, a tale of 3 leaders.
Thank you.
Kisses abounded as President Trump entertained President Emmanuel Macron of France in Washington this week. While the two leaders disagree on the Paris Climate Accord and the Iran nuclear agreement, which Macron supports and Trump opposes, their personal relationship is the epitome of a bromance. But less affection was displayed on Friday when Trump welcomed Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany to the White House.
Why the bromance and the slight difference with Chancellor Merkel?
Well, personality matters with this president. I think gender matters too. I think he's not going to automatically get along with a rather stiff German woman who's all business. And Macron did a lot of clowning for the cameras and a lot of the back and forth and how much they like each other, but then he went straight to Capitol Hill and delivered a speech where he threw the president
Pat wrote
under
that
the bus.
speech.
Well, let me say the key thing here and what's coming up fast is Iran. And Trump is going to abrogate the deal, I think. But what they're working on now, Macron, I think, is to get Trump not to impose the new sanctions, but to try to get Iran to negotiate on missiles there. But that's the big immediate issue. Climate Accord is down the road, the rest of this stuff's down the road. But it was a great meeting, I thought, and the state dinner, I thought was just magnificent.
Yeah, and appealing to the president that you can build a bigger, better deal on top of this other deal, as long as you just stay in that other deal. I mean, he really understands how to manipulate the president's mindset.
Well, I think Mr. Trump is discovering, as he did with health care, that the Iran nuclear deal is more complicated than he expected. It's not that easy just to pull us out or modify it on top or whatever. You got to reopen everything. Our other partner nations aren't ready to do that. Also, he's already given Iran its money back that was being held up in sanctions. And that reduces our leverage, although we can always reimpose sanctions later on if Iran really misbehaves.
Right. You know, there's another thing coming up, and that's in Syria. Trump has said, we're not going to allow the Iranians to maintain this powerful foothold in Syria. The Israelis are saying the same thing. People are talking about getting to the Russians, getting the Iranians out. You're setting the table for a real clash inside Syria with Israel and the United States and Iran.
Seth, do you think in that regard, I mean, Macron is more hawkish than Trump in that area, but one of the questions is, what do you think actually Macron can get out of Trump when it comes to the Iran deal?
Well, I think that he can demonstrate a relationship with the president where they can, look, no one believes that they're going to renegotiate the Iran deal, but there has been some conversation in the background from a diplomatic front that the United States, Britain and France are discussing a so-called supplemental agreement where, and it's not going to be easy, it'll be an uphill battle, but they're talking about layering on a conversation to get into other issues that concern the president. So, for example, the intercontinental ballistic missile piece, which is something that the president's very uncomfortable with, that was not blended into the first part, for better or for worse. I think that the president overall, with all the distractive noise in the background, actually had a pretty good week on a diplomatic front.
What about the short-range ballistic missiles? Of course,
I mean, look, Iran has no ICBM. But you're right, they got missiles that can hit Israel.
Right.
They can't hit Spain, they can't hit the United States. But I think that the Brits and the Germans can sit down and do an add-on on the missiles, and my guess is they ought to be in touch with the Iranians.
And Iran's probably not going to sign on to that either. But
well, why wouldn't they? They don't want war.
Well, if you can just keep talking and keep the president from pulling out of this, I mean,
He's going to pull out, Eleanor. The question is whether he reimposes the
Does anyone here think the Iranians are more emboldened to sort of stand off against Trump because he doesn't want to use military force? Because Korea, he needs it for Korea.
The Iranians don't want a war in Syria or anywhere else.
The hardliners, maybe.
The hardliners here And the hardliners over there are the ones who are looking for war.
They've got the same domestic contrast in Iran that we have here, and you don't want the hardliners to win there, and you don't want them to win here. So Macron is a wonderful bridge between the two sides. I welcome him.
Well, you know, you mentioned Korea. I think that another area where the president deserves a lot of credit this week is what happened in the Korean Peninsula. That was a major development in terms of watching these two hold hands and walk across that line was a major historic moment. And although there was a lot of blending of different factors that went into it, and obviously China had a role, so did Mr.
Keep
Trump.
eyes wide open on this thing, because I don't think the guys, he is not going to give up all those bombs.
He's not going to give up his bomb, but he's not a madman either. And I think that if anything, he's a PR genius. I mean, the way that was orchestrated was beautiful.
With those bodyguards was slightly interesting.
Look at what's happened this past year. A year ago, we had Trump talking about little Rocket Man,
right?
and Trump was being called a dotard or dotard. How do you pronounce that? What's happened in the year in between? Kim has really been calling the shots. He was the one who, first of all, turned away from Trump and turned toward the president of South Korea.
We're going to come to a point where the president of the United States is going to realize that Kim Jong-un will make concessions on tests and things, but he's not going to give up his bombs, and he's not going to let you come in and look at all. Then you got the crunch coming.
You know what? They agreed to stop testing after their testing ground had caved in from previous testing.
Right.
I mean, that's what he's doing right now. They're not going to worry about the bombs.
They haven't given up anything, but there are deals to be made short of completely denuclearization.
There are major challenges that the North Korean dictator is facing that are creating pressures. He has a major crisis in terms of his economy. His people are starving. When people are defecting, they find worms in their system. There are a lot of background pressures, including Mr. Trump in the background, that are really going to be driving him to the table.
And he doesn't know what Trump might do. Anyway, on that note, we will go to issue 3, the Moscow factor.
Former FBI Director James Comey says that President Trump twice told him he had not stayed overnight in Moscow, Russia, during the 2013 Miss Universe competition. But this week, Politico and the Daily Beast challenge Mr. Trump's assertion. Their reporters say that flight and social media records and attendees at the competition all suggest Trump did indeed stay overnight. Why does this matter? Well, because a 2016 dossier compiled by former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele references sources who alleged that the president did stay overnight in Moscow during the 2013 event. There, Steele's sources say, Trump frolicked with prostitutes and thus gave the Russian government blackmail leverage over him. The president strenuously denies these allegations.
Clarence, does the evolving Moscow story pose problems for Trump?
Only if he makes it into such looks like. I mean, the fact is this is the most salacious part of the Steele dossier, and that's the hardest to prove. We may never actually prove it one way or the other. But look at how Trump has behaved this past week. You know, once he starts talking, he talks himself into a hole and into contradictions over timelines, etc., where he makes a problem out of the whole mess.
Yeah, I don't think prostitutes are going to bring this president down. I don't think it's about what the Russians have on him. I think it's about what the Russians can do to him. This financial crimes and financial embarrassment, and the trail leads to Deutsche Bank and all of the loans that this president has outstanding. He's highly leveraged, which is why we don't see his income tax returns. And that money is Russian money, and the ties the illicit ties are the ones that are going to eventually
I think it's problematic. First, because let's suppose you get the interview. Mr. President, were there women in the room in your hotel? He says, no, you got the perjury trap. He says yes, and Mueller says, this is what the Russians hold over the president in terms of blackmail when he sends something up. So this is a problem. There's no doubt about it.
This reminds me of a situation of a famous prosecutor that used to have a fish on a plaque in his office, and underneath was a reading that said, if I had only kept my big mouth shut. This is exactly that kind of a situation. Mr. Trump is sometimes his best supporter and sometimes his worst counter-witness. And this Fox call-in meltdown is an example, and I think Pat is dead on here, that if the president goes in, it's a perjury trap. If they drive him away from that interview, it might be an a police car and he'll be sitting in the back seat.
From a legal perspective, how much, when the president sort of changes his mind on Kim Jong-un, he's, you know, the fat rocket man, and then he's a great honourable man, or whatever the president said, do you think that could help him potentially at any future stage legally, because he simply says, this is me, this is how I do it, you can't take what I say in one moment?
Well, I think that he can try to play that card, but at the end of the day, the problem with Mr. Mueller's investigation is that it really gets grounded down into facts and documents.
Right.
And when you take a look at some of this information, I think that even people within his orbit are going to have a difficult problem. You see, for example, an instance where Donald Trump Jr., it turns out, said that during the day of the Trump Tower meeting that he didn't know who he was talking to on a block call in the middle of that meeting, but it turns out who has a block number? His father. Right. If he demonstrates that he should have known that he was speaking to his father, you have a claim under the false
Tom,
statement.
you got a good point here, Tom, and that is basically that that if Trump gets into the political realm, he can do what you say. I said this, I said that. You're in a legal realm.
Right.
Was this true? Was this false? What happened?
Eleanor?
And
Mueller,
Mueller has the facts and the documents, so it's not like anybody's going to be spilling beans. He knows what the truth is. Now, if the president refuses to cooperate as a witness, refuses to give testimony, what are the legal ramifications of that?
All right.
Well, he's in a vice because they can issue a subpoena for him to be brought in front of the grand jury. Then he can exercise his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination.
President,
it's a disaster.
Then you're in the political realm. He could say, you know, look, we're not doing it.
All right, Clarence.
Everybody will
concluding comment from Clarence. Concluding comment.
I was going to say, I'm just going to say, Trump taking the fifth would be torture for him because he can't answer any question. He's accepted. Right. He just have to constantly say, I refuse to answer.
Okay. When we come back, Ben's Bill and West Wing, and tell your friends they can watch us anytime from Sunday 1 p.m. Eastern at our website, McLaughlin.com.
For more than a century, the Greater Washington Board of Trade has focused on growing our regional economy. We work every day to foster collaboration, build pipelines for skilled workers, embrace innovation, and attract investment. We must think, plan, and act as a region to better leverage our shared assets so we can continue shaping and advancing a vibrant regional economy for the next 100 years.
Hi, I'm Pat Coleman from Jim Coleman Cadillac. This year, we're proud to celebrate our 50th anniversary serving our customers in Bethesda and all across the D.C. area. For 3 generations, our family's been committed to being the best in luxury automotive sales and service, and we invite you to join us in celebrating the half-century mark by taking advantage of our 50th anniversary specials all year long. We want to earn your business, and we hope to welcome you to the Coleman family because our cars are great, but our people are better.
Issue 4, Ben's Bill.
Maybe not by
Housing and Urban
law,
Development
but
Secretary
by
Ben
fact.
Carson sparked controversy on Wednesday when he announced proposals to change the payment caps faced by recipients of federal housing assistance. At present, federal beneficiaries of housing assistance pay up to 30% of their gross income, to a maximum of $50 a month for very poor beneficiaries, towards their housing costs. Carson's change, which requires congressional assent, would increase that cap to 35% of gross income, or up to $150 a month. The new calculation would be based on 15 hours work at the $10 per hour federal minimum wage.
Clarence, is this pro-work reform or is this a punishment to the poor?
Both. It's really, well, the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities, a well-known liberal think tank, has calculated that the worst burden would hit those who already have the lowest income, single moms with kids. And the irony of this is, in the long run, intact families were kind of run out of public housing by rules that raised the rent so high that folks who had working parents at home just moved out of public housing, and we wound up with more and more single-parent households. Now, Carson wants to raise the burden on them. I remember when you used to have to, you were charged like 20% of your monthly income for rent. It's up now to well close to 40%. So this is a burden.
Yeah, and this is coming from a man who authorized $31,000 for a dining set table for his office.
Excellent taste.
When it was when it was discovered, it had to be withdrawn. It's this mindset that people are poor because they don't work hard enough. I mean, it's just completely oblivious of the real factors in life. And also this mindset, you give more money to people at the top, they'll know what to do with it, of course. If you give more money to people at the bottom, oh, that destroys their incentive to work. I mean, it is so cruel, not since Reagan tried to call ketchup a vegetable.
Well, they had a welfare reform, Tom, under Bill Clinton. The point of it is, look, if you got free education, free health care, you get free housing, you get welfare payments, all these things, comes to a point where it doesn't make sense to go out and get a job. We now have full employment. If ever folks are going to go out and get a job, now is the time. And if you increase the incentive basically to go out and get a job, it seems to be a good thing. But what is the balance?
At some point, the numbers just don't foot together, because you have a program that's been operating for about 50 years, but over the last several years, it operates on a multi-billion-dollar budget, and the costs associated with running it have increased. However, the numbers that we're talking about, which are controversial, have stayed flat for many years. So the cash inflow and outflow doesn't match up, and from a fiscal standpoint, there needs to be some kind of a consideration of being able to have some kind of a financial viability here.
Okay, I think Mr. McLaughlin would call you Mr. Math. but Clarence, do you think, if we look at the expenditures on anti-poverty programs, Republicans will say it's not a return on investment. Democrats say they're not the right reforms.
Well,
what do you?
Not all Republicans. A number of Republicans have got great reform ideas. And earned income tax credit was a fantastic idea. Came out of conservative circles, but it's an idea everybody can embrace, and it provides the incentives to work. Welfare reform in the 90s did work to the point where a couple of million poor kids were lifted out of poverty. We have ways to solve these problems, but what is public housing for? To house people. Why do you want to price them out?
Right. We have to
price out the people who
very
need
quickly.
it the most.
Well, and if you're talking about return on investment, look at the tax cut the Republicans just passed. I mean, people are now buying back stocks. They're not turning that into jobs. So let's measure their other accomplishments as well.
Our final very important issue. Issue 5, MAGA's West Wing.
Donald Trump has added a new wing to his Make America Great Again, or MAGA movement. Enter the Kanye West wing. In a series of somewhat odd tweets this week, the popular singer appeared to endorse Trump as an individual and a politician. On Twitter, West stated, quote, "We are both dragon energy. He is my brother," end quote. And on Wednesday, West even wore a MAGA hat. But will Kanye West's support help boost Republican favorability with minority voters? While Trump performed better than Mitt Romney and John McCain with black voters in the 2016 election, Democrats continue to attract far greater support from that demographic.
Seth, is Kanye Trump's secret weapon?
He might be. He's certainly getting a lot of attention on the story this week. Watching this unfold and all of the fallout of the people in the entertainment and music community that have really attacked him on this issue, I just find it to be fascinating, and it really raises the question, whatever happened to freedom of political thought and freedom of expression and speech? I understand that this is controversial, but take a look at the politics. Another rapper, Eminem, not long ago spoke out against Mr. Trump, and he had a lot of expletives and a lot of harsh words, and he was cheered in that arena. And now you have these elites that are attacking.
The intolerance of the cultural left, the intolerance of the cultural left is unbelievable. Here's an odd couple here. It's a pretty interesting, funny thing, and people are going bananas over this thing. However, Trump, look at it. Unemployment among black Americans has been lower than it's been in 50 years. You know, we ought to be able to get some credit for it, don't you think, Clarence?
Well,
Clarence? You know, yeah, he deserves some credit, but he goes around saying it's never been any lower, blah blah blah. Well, no, the fact is that Kanye is not going to suffer for this. For one, this is a great publicity stunt. Kanye and Trump have so much in common. I'm not surprised by this. They know each other and they're playing to each other. But you know who's going nuts? It's not liberals. Nobody's surprised by Kanye West's antics. It's conservatives who are going nuts on Fox and elsewhere, saying, "Look, we got another black Republican over here. Why don't the rest of these black people get with it?" What are they doing?
Why are you yelling about this here, Clarence?
Why am I yelling about
Kanye's come across?
Because I'm so excited, Pat. This is the McLaughlin Group. Why should I not be? Why should I not be yelling?
I think there's equal yelling. I don't think this helps Trump, and I think it potentially could hurt Kanye.
From who?
He's a great rapper, and a lot of people love him, but there's not a big intersection of people who love Kanye and also love Trump.
It's growing.
So it's growing. Okay, maybe we got a new recruit here.
Most of Kanye's buyers are white, by the way.
Yeah.
This unique intersection of culture and politics really demonstrates how profoundly divided we are as a country. For the music and entertainment industry that's supposed to be promoting open thinking and being able to think forward and lean forward, to now be attacking him, he has had a huge outflow of followers on social media, and he's really getting attacked for this.
Don't people have freedom to attack, though? I mean, how is he suffering? How is he being damaged in any kind of way?
Let's check out the sales of his new album.
Yeah, we got.
All right,
we got to get
sales of his album will fall.
We shall.
No,
if it's a bad album.
We shall return proffering predictions.
The McLaughlin Group is brought to you in part by Eric.org. With gridlock in Washington, states are stepping in to mandate paid sick and family leave policies, creating a compliance nightmare for companies with a nationwide workforce. The ERISA Industry Committee is fighting back. Learn how we can help your company at Eric.org.
For more than a century, the Greater Washington Board of Trade has focused on growing our regional economy. We work every day to foster collaboration, build pipelines for skilled workers, embrace innovation, and attract investment. We must think, plan, and act as a region to better leverage our shared assets so we can continue shaping and advancing a vibrant regional economy for the next 100 years.
Predictions, Pat.
The Russians are considering selling their S-300 super anti-aircraft system to the Syrians after these events that have taken place there. If they do, I think it would be a real problem with the Israelis.
Eleanor.
We have not seen the last of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's pre-dawn surprise raids.
Seth.
The increase in technology for listening and voice recognition devices will create a new data security crisis in the cloud. The United States Congress will not have the alacrity and the movement to be able to protect us, so the states will move forward in the vanguard of that protection, and the state of California will take the lead in November.
Man, that was a good one. All right.
Kanye's next album will go platinum.
and on that note, I think there's a very important question, I think, Pat, that a lot of viewers would want to know. What is your favorite Kanye West song?
You know, I like
Jesus
them all.
Walks with Me.
It's hard for you.
Jesus Walks.
Jesus Walks.
I'm helping you out here.
Diamonds
It's a good song.
Isn't that country music?
No, it's Kanye's song.
Here's a little theory. Maybe Trump will take Kanye along with him and his friend Dennis Rodman to meet Kim Jong-un. That would be an interesting quadruple.
I want to be on that
All
plane.
right. I'll get on to my prediction now after that little alteration. I predict that massive protests will greet President Trump during his visit to London on July 13th, but he'll be safe. And here's a random fact. 27 years ago today, Cyclone Bob 01 hit southern Bangladesh, killing at least 130,000 people and leaving millions homeless. In the days following, the US military would save hundreds of thousands of lives by providing critical relief services. You can only do that when you invest in the military. That's my thought. Anyway, thank you, panelists, for watching and contributing. And thank you very much for watching. And again, I'll try and improve my prompter next week. But until then, make sure to follow us on Twitter at McLaughlin Group and visit our webpage, McLaughlin.com, where your friends can watch this show. Live long and prosper.